This is the Grand Canyon Hiker Dude Show, presented by hiKin. Hiking plus kinship. That's hiKin. Together we roam. Here's your host, my hubby, and co-founder of hiKin, Brian Special.
Thank you, Zena. On this show, we often learn from the mistakes. But today, we're celebrating the blueprint for doing it right. Anne and Alexis Keyworth are sisters just back from one of the most iconic and unforgiving hikes in America, Rim2Rim, South Kaibab to North Kaibab, which they did on June 1st. Alexis is 32, works in healthcare, and lives in San Diego. Anne is 36, an attorney, and lives in Raleigh. And what they accomplished wasn't luck. It was the product of commitment, consistency, and a deep respect for the canyon. They trained hard, planned well, studied the terrain, timed their breaks, ate on schedule, had a strategy for the heat, carried exactly what they needed, and perhaps most importantly, resisted temptation. They followed the best practices you've heard on this show and in our Facebook group, and boy, did it pay off. They topped out not just injury-free, but feeling good, because sometimes the canyon gives back exactly what you put into it. Anne and Alexis Keyworth on the Grand Canyon Hiker Dude Show, powered by hiKin. Hiking plus kinship, that is hiKin. Okay, I want to hear from each of you. Let's say Alexis starts here, and then we'll go to Anne. What I want to know is if you could just quickly sum up the entire Rim2Rim experience in just a sentence. What is it? What's the headline? What would you say?
A lot of prep gets you a long way.
Anne?
Maybe knowledge is power. I think that kind of, sums up what our experience was. Knowledge is power.
Yeah, because you guys did post your hike report in the Grand Canyon Hiker Dude Show / hiKin Grand Canyon Facebook group, and it got a lot of engagement. And reading through it, honestly, I just had a smile on my face the entire time, because this was just a Rim2Rim adventure in one of the warmer times of the year, May of 2025, done correctly. And it does show that if you take it seriously and you do things right, and you have strategy and you're willing to make sacrifices, that you can still have a successful Rim2Rim. But you got to do things right, and you've got to take it very, very seriously. So just let's start out. I'm curious. Alexis is from San Diego. Anne is from Raleigh, North Carolina. They're both from Raleigh, North Carolina, but Alexis ended up in San Diego. Lucky her. But how did this idea hatch? Because not only did you guys do Rim2Rim, but a couple of days before, you did Havasu Pie and got to go to Havasu Falls. I mean, talk about the bucket list Grand Canyon experience over just a couple of days. How did this all happen?
Oh, it's so funny, actually. Great question, because we just discussed this like a few days ago, like maybe the day before the Rim2Rim. Anne remembers it very differently than me, but the facts are that like sometime about 9 months ago, I said, "Hey, Anne, would you ever go to Havasu Pie with me? I really want to do this." And she was like, that looks cool. I would do it if you do the Rim2Rim with me. And I said, what's the Rim2Rim? And she told me, and I was like, this is another one of her crazy quests that she's going to go on. That's like an insane adventure. But, this one was in the desert versus going to like one of the colder areas that she, I don't know, sometimes goes to. This one seemed like something I could deal with. So I said yes. Anne remembers it differently.
Yeah, I think it's actually a psychological thing. I think once I realized what an undertaking the Rim2Rim was, I think I couldn't take responsibility for the idea anymore. And so
she's the big sister.
I actually, in my head, it was Alexis's idea to do Rim2Rim.
I'd never heard of it.
And like, I know I'd heard about it from other people, so her version does make more sense. But I think at some point I realized this is like, this can be dangerous, and like people die down there. And I think once that came into my head, really permeated my head, I think I psychologically did not take responsibility for having come up with this idea. But it only makes sense, I think, given what Alexis has said, that it was my idea. So
spoken like a true attorney. Is that right, Alexis?
Yeah, 100% as usual.
So there's a lot that goes into that. I mean, we're talking about 2 bucket list adventures, but there are a lot of logistics you have to figure out, permits you have to get for Havasupai, and then all the logistics you have to figure out for doing a south to north, ultimately rim to rim. So how daunting was it coming up with the plan that you guys ended up with?
It was a lot. It was an awful lot. So, one of the hardest things was getting the room reservations for the Grand Canyon. We actually had the reverse route initially. And so we just took the only day left at the North Rim. And that kind of was the beginning of our itinerary. Okay, this is probably the hardest thing to get. And so we were able to get the reservation we needed at the South Rim. And then we found a flash sale around New Year's for Havasupai. And we just put in a range of dates on either side that would work. We didn't actually think we would get, so lucky with the permits. So we actually divided it up. Like I sought 2 permits to kind of like make our odds the highest, and Alexis separately sought 4. And I think it's this flash sale that they had. We ended up getting all 6.
It's not a sale, but it's an early lottery type thing.
Yeah, it was like an early lottery. And so we were able to get the ideal dates that we wanted, which was it was like we did Rim2Rim on June 1st, which was Sunday, and we had Havasupai from Tuesday until Friday before. And so we were able to get a little acclimated to the heat that way. It all worked out quite ideally. But where it started was the North Rim lodging, which we ultimately did have to end up changing.
Alexis, this is a huge undertaking physically. When you're talking about, Havasupai is a big hike. If you're just going from the hilltop all the way to the falls, that's 10 miles one way. So that's a 20-mile round trip. I'm sure you guys did plenty more while you were down there and added significantly to that mileage. Then 2 days later, you're talking about a 21-mile rim to rim. So significant amounts of climbing, not any time really to recover after the Havasupai trip. So how did you two go about training for this? And were you able to hold each other accountable and keep each other, motivated and up to date on what you were doing to get ready for it? And what did you guys do differently?
Such great questions. Okay, so Anne is so clearly the big sister. So she's like, I follow her lead in like all aspects of life. So I've pretty much copied her from the day I was born. So she's done a lot of like extreme challenges similar to this before. And so she's familiar with like this type of training and maybe for different activities, but the dedication that goes into it. So I followed her lead a lot and then also kind of tweaked things to do what worked for me. I knew that we kind of had 2 main things we had to train for, which was carrying weight into Havasupai and out of Havasupai for backpacking, which I had never backpacked before. And then also the distance and, everything that goes into the canyon, the distance, the elevation gain at the end, going down at the beginning, the heat, all of those different things. So we did different training from each other because I had access to amazing resources out in San Diego in Southern California. I was able to go hiking all around. I've pretty much been gone most weekends since I moved, like hiking and camping in the surrounding areas just to get in as many miles as I could and as much elevation. I also did a lot of hot yoga. And because my roommate is a hot yoga instructor, I'd never done it before I moved there. And that was really helpful. And then we also took a lot of advice from Coach Arnie I didn't do as much backwards walking as I wish I would have. But that was helpful. And then also using the sauna for adapting to the heat. And then Anne's routine looked a little bit different.
Yeah, mine was quite different, I would say, because I don't really have a whole lot around me with elevation. But I will say rucking for both of us was huge. Like just having weight on our backs and miles on our feet. And so on a daily basis, I tend to get somewhere right around 10 miles a day. Some of those are usually with weight on my back. I'm fortunate in that I can walk to work. I have a dog, so I walk my dog. And, I find ways to build it into my daily routine. And that makes just getting used to the weight makes a big difference. And, it does help with building muscle and, cardio fitness and whatnot. Otherwise, I did a lot of, Coach Arnie's suggestion, walking backwards, as well as like step ups, step downs, the Stairmaster, that sort of stuff. And kind of just, I focused on getting miles on my feet, weight on my back, and, steps both directions. And that made a big difference. One other thing I wanted to mention though, Brian, is you asked some question about, working together on this and everything. And I think, one of the things that was so motivating, I think, for both of us, because we've talked about it before, but I can at least speak for myself, is, I think once we really did understand the gravity of what we were undertaking, I think we felt a huge responsibility to one another to be able to, do what we were undertaking. We fully recognize that, we are as strong as our weakest link, and that if something happens to one of us because we didn't prepare, we're putting the other one at risk. And so I think we both wanted to make sure that we were, that the other one was good, but that we were also good so that we weren't putting, someone else at risk. And that's one of the things I think we learned from, your podcast.
That's great to hear. There's still a lot more that you have to, once you make the decision and you start training and you start planning the logistics, there's still a lot more to learn about the canyon that you could pick up. And I know you guys were regular listeners to the podcast. Thank you for that. And part of our hiKin Grand Canyon Facebook group, which is just a wealth of information for anybody who is not in it. That's probably the best resource that we have. I mean, you have just a group of supportive people that are out there just trying to help everyone have their best experience. Is that the place that you guys kind of accumulated a lot of your information? And what kind of information did you gather that made the hike, when you actually got there, be like, okay, this is somewhat familiar, even though we've never been here before?
Yeah, it was all you, Brian.
And the
it's all
people
our
you
group.
interview, both.
Yes. It was the resources you brought to us and made available. I listened to all your episodes twice, Alexis at least once. Literally I get like notifications on Facebook when you post, and I pay attention to them, and so I was constantly, and Alexis was too, like we were both constantly, reading people's trip reports, like reading your suggestions, figuring out how they work, into our plan. I asked you multiple times for your advice on the shade tracker, and you gave it, and we followed that advice.
Did the shade tracker work for you?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Excellent.
Good.
Absolutely,
Flawless.
ideally. And there are other resources out there. Like I definitely listened to some other, you can do a search and podcast for Rim2Rim and whatnot. And so I listened to what else I could find, but this was definitely the most, thorough resource that I think, and totally changed the game. Like before I found it, I had a very different approach than, I did once I was able to kind of utilize the benefit of everything that we found on your page and from your podcast.
Well, thank you. Too kind of you. I hope that question and answer wasn't too self-serving, because that was not the intent of it at all. But it is great to hear that the resources that we do make available are, consumed by folks like you who take it seriously and then ultimately have a better experience. I mean, that's what it's all about to not just me, but I know everyone in our community. And I hope that after this, now that you two are Canyon veterans, that you guys will be active in the community, helping the next generation of Rim2Rim hikers, because it does go a long way. There is a lot to learn. There is a lot to know. And there are little tips that you can just be giving along the way that could change someone's entire experience. So now that you guys have experienced that, I hope that you will, pay it forward and pass that information and inspiration along. So again, thank you for that. Let's talk about the hike itself.
Breaking Canyon news, hike reports, and answers to all your questions. Find it all in our hiKin Grand Canyon Facebook group. Inside, you'll have access to Brian, Coach Arnie, and just about everyone you've ever heard on this show, all there in a safe, judgment-free space, geared to root each other on and help you have your best possible Grand Canyon experience. The hiKin Grand Canyon Facebook group is the official group of the Grand Canyon Hiker Dude Show, and is completely free to join. Just search for hiKin, HIKIN, Grand Canyon on Facebook, and join the conversation today.
Okay, let's talk about the fun stuff now. You guys are done with Havasupai. You are back at the South Rim, ready to go south to north. You know, I just want to hear you guys discuss and remember this hike, which was only, what, 5 days ago,
gosh,
right?
yeah.
6 days ago.
Crazy.
It just happened. So this should be fresh. I'm really curious to just sit back and kind of listen to y'all recount this experience that I feel like you did so perfectly. So let's just start from the time let's start the night before, when you're in Grand Canyon Village or you're in Tucson, wherever you are, and kind of take it from there. And I might interject every now and then, but I just want to hear a couple of sisters talk about this incredible experience.
Careful what you ask for.
Take it, Alexis.
I can't remember. I see her giggling over there, and I think it's because, were you grouchy that night? I can't remember. I think she was a little bit grumpy because we did the shuttle the night before. So we drove my car to the North Rim, parked it, and took the shuttle back to the South Rim. And Anne was not feeling that ride, although we did meet a crew of awesome people that like gave us such great advice. But besides that, the drive, Anne was like, yeah, I'm so ready to be there.
Can I just interject there? So we really actually had like the best time with the crew that we met on the drive, and I've seen some of them, you know, on the Facebook community as well. But we had already done that whole entire drive one time that day. It was just very fast and windy and making me a little carsick. So So, you know, I was ready to be done with it, especially having done it another time that day. And then we got dinner. We got pizza because of Brian's
Are you in Tucson?
brilliant. This was at the we stayed at Bright Angel, but this was at Maswick, like the Maswick area. And so we had heard one of your recent podcasts where you forgot your pizza, and I was like, oh my gosh, pizza sounds brilliant. Yeah. So I was like, we have to get pizza. And so we, you know, got our pizza and then got back to the room.
Wait, so you got the pizza, but did you take leftovers with you?
Yes.
For the hike? Okay.
Yep,
smart.
We sure did. Loved it. And then we got to our little cabin, and the neighbors were very loud. And some sports game was on, and I was like, oh my God, are you kidding me? And then I knew I was going to have a hard time falling asleep. And so Alexis was like, oh, I'll put this, like, you know, something you listen, some bedtime story. And it was just the worst. It was such a bad voice and story. And it was counterproductive. I was up all night.
Turned it off.
And yeah, well, I know I didn't. And so anyway, I was a little grumpy, and then woke up and the outlet I put my phone in had not charged.
Oh, perfect.
My phone was just about to die, but you know, we had prepared with a phone, an extra like battery bank, and so that was fine. And then, we got up 3:00, called for the shuttle at 3:30.
The taxi.
The taxi. They said they'd be there in 15 minutes, and they were. And we were at the trailhead right around 3:56 and got on the trail like right at 4:00.
And what was the plan? You get on the trail at 4:00. What was the plan? What were you guys thinking? Because you had an entire strategy behind this. So before you start telling us about the trip down, what was the overall plan?
The plan, and I'll just say, the plan was actually to take the 4:00 shuttle, the free shuttle. And that changed because I asked the guy at check-in, I was like, what's the shuttle situation looking like for hikers in the morning? And he just did not give a very convincing answer at all. He was like, well, the 5 and the 6 were getting pretty full, and nobody really had information about the 4. And I was like, okay, I don't think we should chance this. Like, we don't want to be risking a 6:00 start. Let's just call the taxi, see if we can do that. And so we did, and worked out great. And then the plan was to essentially the priority was, you know, start somewhere in the 4 to 4:30 range, and then get to Ribbon Falls sometime, you know, 10:30. 10:30 was kind of what we were shooting for. And then hang out there. Between there and, you know,
Cottonwood,
Manzanita, like basically somewhere with resources and where you can take breaks for long periods of time during the high heat and wait, to start going up North Kaibab. And so that was the plan, was just, to wait it out from about 10:30 to 4 o'clock.
Okay, so you knew by looking at the shade tracker that North Kaibab, the hard part from Manzanita to the top, starts shading in at 4 o'clock. So your goal when you started at 4:30 a.m., even though you two are in great shape and you know that you can hike fast, but the plan was to, no matter what, was to ratchet it back and not leave up for the hardest part of the hike in the direct sun and wait for the shade to take over. That was the plan from the time you dropped in.
Correct.
That's right. And we actually ended up being a lot faster, with the beginning part than we thought we would. I looked at the time stamps from my pictures, and we were actually at Ribbon no later than 9:30. So we made it there in 5.5 hours, and we really had thought it could be 6.5 or maybe even 7. And so, we got there ahead of schedule, and we were feeling so good that, we did talk to each other like, oh, it'd be kind of cool if we could, just knock it out. But both of us knew it was that kind of mind versus, I don't know, ego.
It would be hard. That temptation would be incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
I do want to get into that later, because I think that's an incredibly important lesson that you taught us by doing what you ultimately did. But let's go back to South Kaibab. Let's talk about the descent, how it felt on your body, but even more importantly than that, you guys know I talk about South Kaibab all the time, about how just incredible the views are. So I'm curious what you thought of the entire experience, not just the beating that your legs might have taken or might not have taken, and how prepared you were. Just, you're going down South Kaibab, you drop in, it's just after 4 a.m. What happens from there?
Oh my gosh, it was just stunning. It was so pretty. It was really cool. We saw
So it was pitch black when you started, so the sun hadn't come up
exactly
yet.
We had our headlamps on, and we saw just that little stream of people with their headlights on. Not a ton, but enough to make a I don't know, give you a cool idea of where you're going and who else, almost a sense of camaraderie.
And how far down it is, right?
How far down it is, and a sense of camaraderie, which I thought was cool. There were a couple trail runners out. It was fun. It was just a bunch of people starting around the same time, or a handful of people starting around the same time, but we pretty quickly dispersed. Yeah, we stopped at all the facilities on the way down just to give ourselves a second to use the bathroom or fill up water if we wanted to or whatever, take it in. And then the sun came up pretty early too. So I think we maybe had our headlights on for 45 minutes.
So probably around Cedar Ridge or so when the sun started coming up. So what did you guys think? What was that experience like?
It was incredible. And it lasted forever. The sunrise lasted forever. The color just stayed with you as you went further and further down into the canyon.
And you're just nodding along here. What was the experience that you were having?
It was so awesome. And honestly, Brian, it's funny. We'd thought a lot about which route do we want to do. And we had selected the one that we did, which was originally North Kaibab to Bright Angel, right, Alexis? Because we felt like that was the easiest going up. But after seeing so many of your posts about South Kaibab, I was kind of getting sad that we weren't doing it. And so when we were forced into it, I was I'm a little nervous because I do have knee issues typically. So I was concerned about that. I was actually that was the thing I was the most concerned about. But there was also a part of me that was heck yeah, now we can do, now we get kind of the best of the best views, is what it seemed like to me. And so, it was a really neat start. I also loved how the sunrise seemed to just last forever. And it's cool because some of my pictures, the mules crossed us. At what point was that, Alexis?
I don't remember.
Wherever the shelter is, wherever that shade shelter is.
Tip-off?
That's tip-off. That's where the mules passed us. And
on their way down?
Mm-hmm.
On their way down. And so they add such a cool scale to my pictures, because it is so hard in the pictures to get a grasp of how massive of a scale you're talking about. And I have all these pictures where they're just tiny dots, and it's really neat.
Yeah.
I was glad we got to see the mules. Alexis is right, the camaraderie was great. It was nice to be able to cheer on people who you could tell got up, in the middle of the night to get, their start up South Kaibab. And
The smart ones.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And there's something about like starting a hike in the dark that's just kind of cool and fun and a little different. And there's just this like crazy epic view around you, and you're gonna you just have to wait, and you're gonna get it in so many different beautiful lights. And it was just amazing to get to experience that for what felt like a long time.
You just can't capture the scale. You just can't. There's no photos that ever will do the Grand Canyon justice when you see it with your own eyes. And especially when you're down in it, man, that had to be special. Okay, so you get down past tip-off, and you start to see the river, up here below, and Black Bridge below, and those very steep switchbacks all the way down below. What are you thinking then, and what's happening? Are you guys feeling tired at all yet? Because I can speak for myself. When I get to tip-off, it's like, I'm starting to feel it in my legs a little bit, but maybe you guys had done more work than I typically do, and you were feeling okay. How was it?
I don't think the latter part of that is true, where we did more work than you. But
Probably
I think
is.
we were both like looking at each other like, are we really feeling this good? I think we're feeling really good. Let's hope it continues. And yeah, I think we were both very pleasantly surprised.
Alexis asked me multiple times how my knees were doing, and I was almost irritated because I was like, please don't make me say that they're doing fine, because I'm going to regret saying it when they're
Don't
not
jinx
fine.
it.
I was like, I kind of don't really want to talk about it, because they were feeling fine, and I kept just waiting. And, I've been in excruciating pain before from like knee pain going downhill. And I really thought that was going to be the case. And like, I just could not. I was like, I don't know how I lucked out so much. I think it was like a combination of, a multitude of factors, Coach Arnie's training advice, like walking backward and stuff. I wouldn't call it advice from Brian, but I heard Brian, I think, mention one time that sometimes you take ibuprofen like before you start the hike. And I was like, that's a good idea. Let me do that. And I think that was probably huge. The hiking poles, we, are used to carrying a lot of weight, and we didn't have that much on our backs. Like we had bigger packs actually than a lot of the day hike folks, but they weren't the backpacks that we were used to. But yeah, so we got down to the bottom, and I think we're both a little almost alarmed by how good we felt. And and then we realized like we were actually too early to get to do anything at Phantom Ranch.
Well, you stopped at Boat Beach first, right? How was that when you got down there? Now you're truly at the bottom of the canyon, and I'm curious how that water felt. Did you expect it to be as cold as it was?
Yeah, it felt amazing. It was so refreshing. It felt so nice. It was perfect. We didn't spend too much time there, but I think rinsed our feet off and like hung out, spent maybe 15 minutes there.
You soaked your shirt.
Oh, yeah.
I did not. I just wasn't, I wasn't there yet. And that was just at like 7:00. And so, yeah, we had it to ourselves. It was beautiful. So cool to get to, stick your feet into Colorado. It was fun having that to like look forward to too, because once you could see the river, it's like you feel like you can see your progress so clearly. And so it was really fun to just, get to spend a little while like working our way down.
Okay, for anybody who's wondering, Boat Beach is right when you cross the river going north. You're going to go down to the left, and then, pretty shortly thereafter, you're going to see a sign that says essentially Boat Beach and water. And you just go to the left and go down, follow the little social trails down to the water, and you've got this incredible view of the Black Bridge and the canyon all around you and the Colorado. It's a great place to take a picture. It's a great place to take your shoes off and dip your feet in the Colorado, walk out up to your knees. If it's the middle of the summer, dipping your whole body in it. The water is cold. It's 50 degrees or so year round, no matter the time. So that can be pretty shocking with how cold it is. And you might want to bring a small little towel or something, I've found, to carry that with me to dry your feet off so your feet don't get sandy when you put your socks back on. That might be a little pro tip for you. But okay, Boat Beach, yeah, it's a must stop now. I put that on my must stop list only recently. when I realized just how incredible the photo is that you can get down there. And to be able to dip your feet, it's worth the stop. So Phantom, not too far after that. What did you guys do when you got to Phantom, which is only about, probably a little bit less than half a mile from Boat Beach?
We realized it was closed, which we were a little bit bummed about because we wanted to get stamps and send some postcards from there.
You were too fast.
We were too fast, I mean, you win some, you lose some.
Canteen opens at 8 o'clock. You guys were there about 7:30?
Exactly.
7:15.
Yeah, so begged everybody around for, stamps. And of course, smart people don't carry extra stuff when they hike, I guess. There are a lot of people. So we didn't have luck yet with that. We did later on. But we just hung out for a minute, refilled on water, hit the bathrooms, I think, and kept it moving.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that. I think the folks on the shuttle had advised that we get stamps and postcards before and fill them out before. Great advice, highly recommend. You're not going to want to take the time to do that, on a hike, and you might have to wait for the canteen to open. So we did get the postcards, we addressed them, filled them out, but we just couldn't find stamps at the South Room that night. Everywhere we asked didn't sell them. And so what we ended up doing is realizing we're going to be passing a whole bunch of other people who are coming back to Phantom Ranch, in the other direction. And so we decided to ask people who looked like they'd probably be staying there rather than, just people who are really booking it to get all the way up to the rim. And so we found a couple of gentlemen, I think Jeff and Craig, who were doing a week-long backpack trip. And so we just asked them and tried to give them I think a $5 bill, for a few stamps. And they were so kind. And that's one of the really cool things about this is just, like Alexis said, the camaraderie and just how helpful and encouraging people are. And so they were happy to help and, just took them, said they were going to be doing the same thing. And so, hopefully they make it out of the canyon. The postcards, I'm sure Jeff and Chris did, but the postcards.
So you leave Phantom Ranch. It's about 7:30 now. Now you're, almost immediately in the box. How did the box live up to expectations? And you guys got in there way before the heat of the day, so props to you on that.
Yeah, that was definitely helpful. It wasn't hot yet, I don't think. I don't remember feeling hot. Do you, Anne?
It was shaded. It was still shaded. And the guys on the shuttle had told us that I think they had maybe started the box sometime 8:30 or so, and they told us they had shade the whole time. And so, we were like, great, this is going to be ideal.
Yeah, they had let us know that they kind of hit the heat when they hit the frying pan. So I would say the one thing we didn't have nailed down was the distance, how long it would take before we got to the frying pan area. And then it did start heating up at that point, but it still was manageable until we got to Ripon Falls. It wouldn't have been pleasant to continue hiking.
Shade can save your life. That's why we invested in the Grand Canyon Shade Tracker, a completely free tool that lets you see when and where you'll have shade on your hike, no matter the trail, no matter the day, no matter the time. Plan your hike around maximizing your time in the shade and stay safe from the brutal canyon sun. The Grand Canyon Shade Tracker is brought to you free of charge by hiKin Grand Canyon, and you can find it at gcshadetracker.com. That's gcshadetracker.com. Go on, hunt that shade, and have a happier hike.
Okay, so you got through the box. You got through the box probably, an hour and a half or so.
Comfortably, yeah.
So it's probably between 9 and 10 when you get through the box. And the frying pan, I don't know if there's a defined what the frying pan is. To me, it's the entirety from the end of the box all the way to Manzanita, because it is exposed just about the entire way. So that's what when I say frying pan, that's what I think of. And that's why North Kaibab can be so dangerous in the summer, because you have the box to deal with. And it doesn't matter which direction you're going. You've got the box to deal with, which gets all the notoriety. The frying pan, because of how exposed it is just as dangerous, despite the box getting all the notoriety. So that entire, 8.6 miles between Phantom Ranch and Manzanita is not a pleasant place to be when the sun is overhead and it's a hot day. So when you guys get into the frying pan area, you say it starts warming up, and your next stop is Ripon Falls, right?
Yeah, and my memory is that I feel like it was fairly comfortable up until Ripon. And then we had, we stayed at Ribbon for a while. We got to Ribbon like 9:15, 9:30, stayed there for till 12:15. And from then to Cottonwood was the one part that really was like, we were both so glad that it wasn't going to have to be long, and that it wasn't, much of an incline, because we were both like, this is just not pleasant.
If you're going to be out there, it's got to be in short stints. You can't be, powering through in the middle of the day, of a summer day, in the frying pan or in the box, or even going up really anywhere. It's just not a pleasant place to be, the canyon, in the middle of the day. But tell me a little bit about Ribbon Falls, because you said you were there for 3 hours. How was it getting to Ribbon Falls? Did you take the first junction before Asinine Hill? And then how was it crossing and getting to the falls? And then ultimately, what did you guys think of the falls?
We bypassed Asinine Hill. We actually printed the map. I'm not sure if it was you, Brian, who shared it, but somebody like highlighted the route, from the main route. I clocked it at like somewhere 0.3 or 0.4 miles from, where the trail was, and then something like that back. And so it really wasn't far out. It was a little tough to navigate, but you could see your end goal. And so it was kind of a matter of just picking and choosing. There were several places where it seemed like there were multiple routes you could take, and they'd probably both get you there. Alexis had boots and no sandals, and so we tended to try to pick routes where, like, there was one crossing where there was no avoiding taking her boots off, but other ways we tried to find the routes that didn't require doing that multiple times.
Yeah, so you had to cross Bright Angel Creek. I mean, there's no getting around that, and depending on the time of the year, how much rain there's been, snow melt, whatever, it can be at different levels and easier or harder to cross depending on. But you guys say there was no way to avoid getting your feet wet crossing that this time.
For us, yeah. I could see how someone extremely athletic could get through it without, could kind of climb up the rocks and maybe avoid it. But I am not athletic in that way. So.
Okay, fair enough.
I'm used to creek crossings. I'm used to having to take my boots off, so I don't mind. No need to go out of my comfort zone.
So you get to Ribbon, and you finally pick your way back there. What'd you think of Ribbon?
It was amazing. It felt like being in an AC. It definitely felt like it had air conditioning in that area. It was so beautiful. I absolutely loved the little tunnel that you could climb through. I do wish that I had sandals. That would have made a big difference, especially Tevas. I had Chacos, and I considered bringing them, but I was like, they're heavy. Do I really want to bring, a couple extra pounds if I can avoid it, and decided not to. But since we ended up spending so much time there and kind of getting in and getting out, it would have been nice to have them. But Tevas are so lightweight that's what I would do next time.
I also had an extra pair of Tevas that I was going to bring for Alexis, but my dog ate one of them. So that
rude.
plan went south. I was curious about, the water level, and can you really get your whole body in? You can at, where it's at right now. You could, I would say it was close to waist level at its deepest, and you could definitely lay down in it if you wanted to. So it was a great resource to have. We loved, you can climb up on top of that big mound and go under the waterfall, and we loved doing that. It was a really neat view. It was so cold, really refreshing, and just a really neat experience. We were so glad that was one of the funnest parts of the day, I think, and we also met and got to speak with so many other people. And I think that was one of the highlights for me, was all the folks that we met, some of whom we, have heard from since. Just a really great, fun place to kind of, hear from other hikers, hear how everybody's day is going. And it was a fun kind of collecting point.
And you guys ultimately spent 3 hours there. And that was by design, right? Tell us about what was behind that decision.
Yeah, so you were behind that decision, Brian. When our route got switched, I made a post and I asked, is Ribbon Falls, because you had actually mentioned it at one point in a different post, that taking a break at Ribbon is a great idea. So I'd asked in some posts, should we plan on breaking at Ribbon? And you very helpfully responded and said, that's a great idea. You can make your way up slowly, to Cottonwood and then to Manzanita, so that you can take off from Manzanita at 4. So that's what we did. We just said in that time frame, that's our only goals. We'll stay at Ribbon as long as we, want to. Then we'll mosey up to Cottonwood. We'd heard from the guys on the shuttle that Cottonwood was a great site to hang out at. But actually at Ribbon, we gave each other back rubs and foot massages. And I swear that made such a difference in our feet feeling so good for the whole day. And that's also where we had our first slices of pizza. So it was just a really nice little break. And Alexis, I don't think you actually fully napped there, but you definitely kind of closed your eyes on a towel, got comfy,
on the chili pad. Yeah. We got that big rock in the center. We had that thing all to ourselves for 2 hours, an hour. It was so nice.
Yeah. And then once the sun was at about 12:15, we realized this is not shaded anymore. We'd have to go up above the mound of the lower part of Ribbon Falls and kind of stay up there in order to still have the shade. And so we were let's just move on out to Cottonwood. It was a mile and a half. We knew it would be hot, but so we just soaked all of our stuff and we're we can manage for an hour and a half.
But the plan was still to not start up the North Rim from Manzanita until 4 o'clock. So this was going to be another of those short stints. It's okay, it's getting hot here. We can handle it for a mile and a half, and then we're going to stop again at Cottonwood and reassess.
That's right. And we just didn't want to get sunburned, laying there at Ribbon. So we were we've really enjoyed this, but we can go ahead and knock something else out, get back into the shade. And we'd heard good things about Cottonwood. And so that's exactly what we did. And I will say we had bought sunbrellas, the full on ridiculous, in any other instance, embarrassing devices that not the umbrella that you hold or that attaches to your backpack, but one that you wear as a hat and it sticks out.
It's huge.
We were kind of excited to get to go to those lengths, but we actually forgot. So we did have the frog tog pads all wet and everything like that. And so we just kind of got from Ribbon to Cottonwood. It was hot. That was the part we were really glad that we stuck to the plan that we did. And then at Cottonwood, it was so awesome. We just grabbed a picnic table in the shade and literally took naps for another hour and a half, almost 2 hours on the picnic table.
It was amazing.
Ate more and just
protected our stuff from the squirrels.
You gotta do that.
Some fat squirrels.
Fat and
you almost got to have somebody who's up on sentry duty, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I kept my hands on mine. Yeah, it was fun. It felt so nice there. And then, of course, got to refill in water, go to the bathroom, and chat with other hikers along the way. It was really nice.
So you're moving your way towards 4 o'clock. You stopped at Ribbon Falls for 3 hours. You made your way to Cottonwood in the heat of the day. Again, a short stint, so that's okay. You guys knew you could handle it. Stopped at Cottonwood again, got in the shade, refilled water, rested, took naps. You were at Cottonwood for what, an hour or two?
We were probably there for 2 hours. And then we left right on the dot at 3 o'clock. That actually, there was some wind. I remember thinking, should we put our sunbrellas on now, and realizing it was windy and they wouldn't do well in the wind. But it was no problem. We got up to Manzanita before 3:30, just met some more folks there, got all of our water, ready. At that point, actually, we were informed that Supai had just turned its water on. So, but we didn't totally want to trust it. For days it hadn't been on. So we were we're just going to fill up as if this is the last thing. And we decided not to say anything to anyone else about it being on, because we were we don't want to tell them that. And then it turns out it's been turned off again or something. So we just kind of acted like it wasn't back on.
Man, that was a veteran move, because sometimes the days that Supai's water is off, you can count in years. Wow. Actually. So amazing that it was on. So it was smart to just be prepared in case you were disappointed. So this is where I want to get into this entire little section right here. When you're talking about getting to Ribbon Falls and feeling so good. And then you're feeling good at Cottonwood, you're feeling good at Manzanita. And you're thinking to yourself, man, we feel so good. Man, if we just push it and get to the top and we could have a nice afternoon on the North Rim and hang out, it had to be tempting because you guys are in great shape. You had prepared for this. Okay, maybe we can push through and get out of here faster than we thought we could. Yeah, it's going to be sunny, but maybe we'll just deal with it. How did you resist that temptation?
I will say, I think we both are well aware that that's exactly where people go wrong, is thinking that like, I'm ready for this. I'm going to be okay. I'm not going to stick with my plan. I mean, sometimes they're okay, but sometimes you're not. And I think we both agreed that there's no benefit to taking a risk if, I guess it's risk versus reward. Like the potential harm it could do was much greater than the potential gain.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that the podcast community and you individually as well, Brian, like have done an excellent job of really imparting, the severity of the heat. And I had been concerned that week because the heat for the day we were going to be down there at Phantom Ranch, which granted we were past by this point, but was projected to be 103, 104. Now the morning of, it changed to 101, and I don't know what it ended up being at its highest, at Phantom Ranch, but we were prepared for the hundreds and, or for, right around 100. And I just, we really, I think, listened to the caution that we saw from folks that, we look to as experts and role models who have been there, done that a number of times. I mean, it's very consistent advice, between you, Buffy, Coach Arnie, like folks that regularly, contribute to the community and stuff. And so we weren't messing around, we had no interest in getting ourselves into a situation that we knew could be hard to come back from. Like heat exhaustion is, one of those where if you start going down with it, it is not easy to just turn that around and, get back to where you were before. And so like Alexis said, risk versus reward, the risk just didn't make sense to us. Like now if it had been 20 degrees cooler or something, I don't know, that would have been probably a different analysis, but we knew we were there in a high heat time. And it was like we were both very committed to treating heat as the biggest risk factor and doing everything in our power to mitigate that.
And also, we weren't doing this for time. We weren't trying to meet a certain time goal. And I think that was helpful. I mean, we had plenty of time goals set in the sense that we wanted to be, at certain places at certain times to make sure we avoided the heat. So we were so careful to not put pressure on ourselves to finish in a certain period of time out of, wanting to reach just goals as far as how fast we can go. It was more about just avoiding risk and maintaining safety and also not putting other people in a position where we have to be rescued. Yeah, just trying to be mindful.
Yeah, and ultimately, you did it for strategic reasons, but didn't it contribute to just the overall experience and making it better? Oh, yeah.
Napping at Cottonwood, that was the best.
Well, and it was so wild how good we felt the whole time. And, I just think if we had pushed through and really exerted ourselves during those high heat hours, which were there that day, I just don't think we would have felt as good. Like, we ended feeling amazing. And I mean, we literally felt like we could just head back right now, if we were prepared for it. And I don't think there's any way we would have felt that way physically if we had been exerting ourselves, uphill through those high temperatures.
Yeah, and going up Manzanita, here's the beauty of North Kaibab. We always say that the climb truly begins at Manzanita. You gain about 2,000 vertical feet between Phantom Ranch, the river, and Manzanita, but you don't really feel it. It feels flat most of the way. And then when you get to Manzanita, you got 3,641 feet to be exact of elevation to gain over 5.4 miles. So the second you step on the trail from Manzanita, you are going straight up. It is going to be the hardest part of the hike, and that is where shade is most important. The beauty of North Kaibab, if you look at the shade tracker and you look just at North Kaibab, you will notice that from Manzanita to the top, in the time between 4 and 4:30, the entire trail shades in. From Manzanita all the way to the top with very few pockets of sun. So it is such a bonus to have that patience to wait until it was 4 o'clock for you guys. It's different at different times of the year, but that entire trail shades in, and it makes for a better experience when you are doing the hardest part of the hike in the shade. And I'm sure that that's what you both found when you stepped onto the trail from Manzanita.
Yeah, definitely. It was, I think, it all worked out so ideally, and that's much thanks to the shade tracker. Like we knew, just don't bother starting until 4 p.m. And, it was not just shaded, but there was like a nice breeze. So it was ideal. It was really, that made all the difference, was waiting for that shade to hit in.
And now you can look around and enjoy yourself, right? So Alexis, what was the climb up North Kaibab like for you?
The climb up was my biggest concern for myself, that and the heat. Anne's was going down, but mine was going up. That was my biggest concern. I honestly never hit a point where I was like feeling miserable, which surprised me. I mean, I do a lot of hiking in California, so I really had been working hard to make sure that I was prepared, but I was really pleasantly surprised at just how prepared I felt for Manzanita. Or for going up, from Manzanita. It felt pretty comfortable. I'm not saying I was, not huffing and puffing the entire way, because I was, but I really started listening to your advice and others to, there's other people who've told me this as well, to not max out my cardio levels and to stay, keep my heart rate low enough that I could keep going longer without having to take quite so many breaks. And that really helped. I don't know how many breaks we took on the way up, maybe like 8 to 10. And I mean, like stopping, waiting for 30 seconds sometimes, and then keeping on going. Some of them were a little bit longer, more like 10 minutes. But it just felt really pleasant. Like, all things considered, I think we were both really pleasantly surprised. The footing, compared to what I'm used to in Southern California, was like really nice. There were some bigger steps towards the end, but it wasn't as bad as it could have been. And the views were, incredible. Every time we turned around, we just like laughed, and it just hits you, and it's insane that you're hiking through the Grand Canyon, and the most insane part was that we felt good.
And Alexis keeps sounding surprised when she says that. But I just keep coming back to, you guys did everything right, and so this is the reward.
Yeah, that's how it felt, honestly, was like, this was the reward, like all of our training, all of our research, from the podcast and the Facebook page and everything, like was all paying off. And we kept looking at each other, like, when is it gonna really suck? And we just never got to that point. And we were ready for it, I was kind of looking forward to it. I like to suffer a little bit, and like, I don't know how to describe it, but
we can make that happen too, just so you know.
When we do our rim to rim,
rim to rim to rim.
Or rim to rim to rim. Yeah. Thank you. But yeah, I think so. If my memory is correct, I think we had 2 5-minute breaks, 1 10-minute at Supai, which was partly because we were talking to the ranger.
Yeah, Della.
Is it Alexis?
I think so.
Yeah, who's so lovely, and someone else had told us how awesome she was, and so
Jeff and Craig.
Some of that was just chatting with her and some other folks that we met there, and so I think in total we took like maybe 20 minutes of breaks, and a few like short, just little like take in the view, catch your breath.
Get a salt tab, get some electrolytes.
We definitely followed, again, Brian's lead of, we'd heard you say at one point that you pop a salt tab, like one, I think you do like every half hour or something, a couple an hour. And so that's what we did. We just, we're pretty religious about doing it every half hour, and that worked well. We had, our water bottle for electrolytes that we would we would get into every time we did, any sort of stop, but otherwise we just had water in our water bladders. We probably carried I carried 3.5, Alexis probably carried 4 liters.
Mm-hmm.
So you had 3-liter bladders?
Yeah, 3-liter
Yeah.
bladders. I had 2 just small plastic water bottles, like the normal, size that you buy at the gas station, and she had 1.
What did you do for food?
So much. We pigged out.
Tell us what
We
worked.
pigged out.
I mean, you guys did so
Yeah.
well. Tell us what worked. Or what didn't work, or what you would leave behind next time.
I brought, I think, 3 different types of granola bars. Like, one was a cookie, a Lenny and Larry's cookie. One, and then 2 just separate, like, different brands of granola bars. So I had some variety, but plenty of options in that way. I brought 2 of those gummy electrolyte chews that also have like 25 milligrams of caffeine in them. I think they're maybe Gatorade brand, actually, or something. Cliff Bar.
The blocks.
Yeah, it was
Cliff,
the blocks.
Yes, I've used
And
those.
I had started using them like a couple weeks before to make sure I handled them well.
Smart.
I brought like 3 honey stingers, and then, what else besides that? I brought a few sour gummy worms just like to motivate myself and give myself some sugar. Anne had a chocolate bar. We both had 2 pieces of pizza that we brought and ate. One at Manzanita and one at, what's it called? Ribbon. And then Anne, what else?
Peanut butter and jelly.
Oh, yeah,
we had those, what are they called? Uncrustables?
Yeah, for breakfast and like a midway snack.
Yeah, and I ate every hour pretty religiously.
On purpose, or did you just eat when you were hungry?
On purpose.
Okay.
I am a big believer that food is fuel, and it works very well for me to just like, I have bonked before when I, don't have enough food. And so it's funny, like, when I keep up with food, I just feel so good. Mm-hmm. And that's true after the fact too. Like after the hike, like if I have enough food, I just feel great. And like I don't get tired, And so for me, just like
Same.
Having food every hour, having something. I had a lot of the same things that Alexis had. I might have had more quantity in some of them. Like I think I had 2 of those Larry's cookies. I had 3 of the honey stinger waffles, a couple of the Uncrustable peanut butter and jellies, a couple pieces of pizza, a banana.
Chocolate bar.
Chocolate
bar.
The chocolate bar didn't really work. It, of course, melted, and so we used our fingers
good.
for like
I don't know what you're talking
a little
about.
bit, but we didn't finish the chocolate bar.
Do you still have that? Because I want.
Well, I put it in the refrigerator when I got home, and then I finished it. But
you earned it.
But yeah, so for me, like having adequate food is that's where it's at. That's probably one of the most important things for me.
We also did electrolyte packets as well as the salt chews and the blocks.
Yeah, you guys stayed on it. So you say every hour that you would eat, and I'm curious. Did you just remind yourself? Did you set an alarm? Did you just look at your watch at the right time? Or were you just hungry and it was the right time?
I was keeping pretty good track of time because I wanted to make sure we were getting where we needed to be. I also wanted to make sure we were doing the salt. So I was kind of annoyingly calling out when it was time for another salt tab and stuff.
It wasn't annoying. It was great.
So I was pretty on top of time. And so, I think it was the hour mark that I would get something to eat, and Alexis did most of the time as well, not as much as I did, but we ate quite regularly, and I will say I added at the last minute some additional snacks to my pack, and I was glad I did. Mm-hmm. I remember looking and being like, this doesn't quite look enough, because we finished earlier than we thought we would, and we also were prepared if something really went south. We were prepared to be in there all night.
Celebrate your Grand Canyon adventures with our unique line of tees, hoodies, and more at hiKin.club. From Rim2Rim to Victor Vomit, you're sure to find something to satisfy your Grand Canyon obsession. That's at hiKin.club. hiKin. Together we roam.
We had emergency blankets, puffers. We had emergency gear for in case something really went
satellite
south.
device.
And so Yeah, I had a Zolio device, which I was able to text from and give like hourly updates and stuff. It did not work perfectly, but it was, it was kind of enough. And so at the last minute, I added some more snacks, and I was glad I did. I went through almost all of them.
Well, you were prepared to self-rescue too, on top of everything else. I
We
mean,
don't want to be a liability.
Miss Mary sure would be
Aw.
proud to hear all this. Let me tell you that. Okay, so you finally make your way to the North Kaibab trailhead. You're finally there. What was the finish like for you? Was it cool?
Yeah.
Was it anticlimactic? Was it like, wow, what a sense of
was
accomplishment?
amazing.
Was it emotional? What
We
was
actually
it?
got to the, I hope I say this right, Coconino
Coconino Overlook?
Coconino Overlook, and we were like, we feel really good. I think we can make
Still
sunset.
surprised.
Yeah.
Still surprised.
So we were like, we were going to take like a bunker down and take like a 10-minute break, but I was like, why don't we go and try to make sunset at the North Rim? Because she wanted to. She had mentioned that, and I was like, let's go. I think we can do it. So we did. And she told me at one point there were 2 switchbacks left, and somebody on his way up or on his way down to check on another person had said the same thing. And so I was like, all right, we're right around the corner. And then all of a sudden she's like, look, we're there. And we felt great. We came out and there were a handful of people there and cheering us on, which was so nice and so encouraging. I was so proud of us. It was nice to be like encouraged and celebrated. We learned that it was that point that we learned that the lodge had lost power. And we had dinner reservations, so we were kind of bummed about that. We'll touch on that, I'm sure, in a second. And then we also met this lovely couple. This man named Dwayne was getting ready to do the hike the next day on his 65th?
Yeah, 65th.
And he, it seems like he was pretty encouraged by seeing people come up that were feeling good. So it was really nice to talk with them.
So that camaraderie thing was from beginning to end.
Yeah, it was really cool. It was, and I'd heard that there's usually going to be someone there to kind of greet you and stuff, but it was so nice. And
Felt really good.
Everybody was like, you guys look so fresh, like, which was also like really nice to hear. Yeah. We ran into some folks that were looking for folks we had met down at Cottonwood. And so we were able to say like, yeah, like they're doing great. They're all looking out for each other and like having fun. And, so it was just a really fun way to end, like get to share a little bit, get to hear a little bit, from others. And, I was so just like so excited for Dwayne to spend his 65th birthday out there. And he successfully completed it as well. So it was just a lot of fun. That was actually the first day though, that I think that the North Rim had lost power about 10 minutes before, something like that. Like,
so you guys, okay, so it happened basically right as you got there. You had no idea. So you go to the lodge to check in. What happened?
Well, so what's funny is that we had parked at the campground. So we had a little walk, like maybe like 10 minutes or something. Dwayne had offered to drive us to it. And we were like, no, we feel good. Like, we'll just walk. So then we drove from there to the visitor center, thinking the visitor center was the lodge. And, it's not a far distance. It's maybe a 1/10 of a mile or something. And the sun was actively setting. And so we just looked at each other and we're like, want to race? And so we like raced each other running full speed, to catch the sunset at the lodge. And, walked in, it's busy, it's like getting dark, and we just walked right out to, that viewpoint and enjoyed it for a few minutes, like took some pictures. And then, we'd actually decided like, well, this seems like not, ideal of a situation. And we felt so good that we were like, we had to go right by Zion to get to Vegas, where I was flying out of the next day. And Alexis has a friend there with a place that we could stay. So we were like, why don't we just like book it up there so that we can get some hiking in the morning at Zion?
Wow.
So we just canceled our reservation.
Wow.
They refunded
and
it.
got out and caught up with some people we'd met on the trail that day. It's so good to like, see everybody like happily made it and everything. And so, we just hit the road and, that was that. I was sad we didn't get to spend a little bit more time at both the South Rim and the North Rim. Our itinerary was so packed.
How we like
but
it.
we did get to, Yeah, that's kind of how we roll. We pack as much in as we can, but we did get to see, the end of sunset at the South Rim, and we got to see sunset at the North Rim. So, check, check.
Yeah.
Amazing. Always making the best of things, right? You guys could have just complained and whined and, oh my gosh, we got all the way over here and hiked across the Grand Canyon, and now the North Rim's closed and they're canceling reservations. Such an unfortunate situation. By the way, anyone who's listening to this in the future, this was just a power outage at the North Rim, and so it just caused all kinds of chaos, and they had to cancel people's reservations for several days, and it was a disappointing situation for everyone involved. I mean, not just the hikers, but the people who live there, the NPS workers. It was unfortunate, but ultimately they got it straightened out, and you guys made the best of it. You went to Zion, so you covered Havasupai, you covered Rim2Rim, you covered Zion. That is a packed schedule, unbelievable. To wrap this up, just tell me, what do you think that you'll each take away from this ultimately? You've only had 5 days for it to kind of soak in and to kind of look back on and reflect, but ultimately, what do you think you learned about yourself? What do you think you will ultimately just take away from this when you talk about it years from now?
I would say knowledge and preparation pays off. Like, do your research, know the resources, know the terrain, follow other people who've done it, ask questions, but just really do whatever you can in your power to educate yourself about the risks and the area and, what you need, timing, like I said, resource availability, all of that. I think, like I started out saying, knowledge is power. And I feel like it really empowered us to not just complete this like epic, goal of ours, but really thoroughly enjoy it and just feel so good and want, to come back and do it twice over.
And Alexis, doing this with your sister. I mean, what an incredible experience you two just had.
Yeah, we love sharing things. We love spending time together. It's quite a memorable experience, and to be able to do it together, there's, nothing better other than if our other sister would want to come, but she would never. So yeah, no one else that would do it with us, I don't think.
I got to tell you, when I read your trip report, your hike report a few days ago, and I was going through it and just kind of, when there was the part when you talked about the temptation to continue on and to walk into the teeth of the heat on just a brutal afternoon. And I just kind of held my breath. And then you're like, but we resisted that temptation and we did this instead. And I was just like, yes. Yeah. They did everything right. But then, when you kept talking about how good you felt, I kind of just jumped ahead in my mind, and I'm like, I bet these two are already thinking not just about coming back, not just coming back for Rim2Rim, but these two have Rim2Rim, the double crossing in their sights. And I come to find out that I was right about that hunch, huh?
I could see us doing it one day. Yeah, we've talked about it a little bit. Sure. Yeah. I don't know how it'll look. We'll see. You should join us, Brian.
That would be so fun.
Yeah.
To go with someone, if we were going to do a one-day Rim2Rim, and to go to someone who had a smart strategy like that, because I've never come out of a Rim2Rim with a smile on my face ever. I'm 0 for 3. But maybe it's because not having proper strategy and just chilling and enjoying the experience as much as you can would have something to do with it. So I might just tag along with you guys and just do what you say, because you clearly know what
I think we did what you said,
and it
so
proved itself. Well,
you can play that game.
I'm not going to say that I always practice what I preach. I try to, but
Brian,
you guys, but maybe I should. I don't know.
You were our MVP. And you have no idea how many times your name came out of our mouth that day between ourselves as well as, amongst other hikers. You were our MVP. Absolutely. And don't get me wrong, this whole community has really brought, just so much, has really empowered us. But you brought everybody together, and you are so quick to respond and so helpful and non-judgmental with your, the information that you provide. Every time I had a question, I felt like I was given such a, thorough answer that I really felt confident in executing on, and having some kind of confidence just in at least our plan made a big difference for us going into it.
Well, thank you so much. You guys are way too kind. I'm so grateful that you took the time to come here and tell us your story. Again, these two, Alexis and Ann, did everything right and ended up with a smile on their face. So I hope people will learn from your experience and follow the lessons that you taught through what you did and ultimately have their best possible Grand Canyon experience, because that is what it is all about. Alexis and Ann, thank you so much for your time and your story, and we can't wait to see what you do next and hear all about it when you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
Ann and Alexis Keyworth. Now, they gave out a lot of credit to our community for their success, but now it feels like they're the teachers. And I hope we see them in our group doling out advice for a long time to come, because I'm really not kidding when I say I'd listen to them. All right, the 3 big takeaways from me from that interview. Number 1, preparation pays off every time. Ann and Alexis didn't just wing it. They trained, they planned, they studied, and they executed. From their early start to their well-timed breaks, and treated this hike with the seriousness that it deserves. The reward was a safe and joyful experience across the canyon. Number 2, stick to the plan, even when you're tempted not to. When everything was going well at Ribbon Falls, it would have been easy to push ahead, but they did not. They honored their schedule, waited out the heat, and hit the tough part of North Kaibab in the shade, just like they had planned. The discipline, I really think that made the whole day. Number 3, success stories matter too. Not every episode needs to be a misadventure to be valuable. Ann and Alexis gave us something we don't always hear, what it looks like when hikers get it right. Their story ultimately isn't just inspiring, it's a template for how to hike the canyon smart, safe, and strong. All right, the sisters just demonstrated how important mindset really is. And one of the key elements of that is learning its 4 pillars. Coach Arnie explains.
This one is a little tougher for me, only because it does fill up one of my 4 buckets for canyon training, and that's the mindset bucket. So it's tougher only because whenever we talk about mindset things, everybody is so different. And I'm calling this becoming anti-fragile. Anti-fragile is it's not even a real word, but it's a word that we need to think about. So how do we develop that mindset bucket? Don't do it in the canyon. That's the first thing I have to say. It's too late and potentially very dangerous. We must be intentional about pushing ourselves to the edge physically and mentally in our training. We must learn how to suffer. Anybody that ever works with Coach Arnie understands when I talk to them, when we're going through training, that we want to learn how to do things from nutrition to all the different things in our training, not in the canyon. And suffering is one of those things that most everybody doesn't want to do until they're actually in it. But it's something you can actually train. You can do that. Lastly, we must understand when we train our minds to go through what Coach Arnie calls his 4 levels, we must understand that we can train our minds to go through these 4 levels. And here they are. 1 is exhaustion. All of us will experience exhaustion whether we're in training or in the canyon. I promise you, we all will. Okay? That's level 1. Level 2 is we will say to ourselves, why am I doing this? This is dumb. So if you're in the middle of a long training session, a hard training session, you will go, this is dumb. Who does this? This is crazy. That's level 2. Remember, most people will quit at level 1 when it's hard. Now we're in level 2 where it's dumb. Level 3 is I'm a failure. It gets emotional because you think you're better. You've been training hard. You have this big dream and you're emotionally exhausted from all the training, from the long session. Okay? You can train this emotion. You can train it through the training. Okay? Level 3 is the hardest level because it's so emotional. But guess what? Level 4, this is amazing. This is what I call nirvana. This is joy. But let me explain something. You must go through the first 3 to get to 4. You cannot just go to 4. You've got to go through the journey to 4. And that means you do it through your training. You do it through your training. And if you wait to do it in the canyon, you might make it or you might not. But if you know that it's coming, you can do it. I promise you. Learning how to suffer, learning to become anti-fragile can be done, but it's very difficult. But just take this to heart. The mindset bucket is the toughest bucket, but you have to train and you have to fill that mindset bucket. I promise you, you can do it if you really want to. I love you guys, and get out there and you can do this. You can do whatever you want to do if you earn it and if you fill up those buckets. I love you. Talk to you later.
Oh, suffering in the canyon is definitely a thing. If you do it long enough and push yourself, or if you let your guard down just a little bit, you'll probably eventually find out what it means and have your own story to tell. Coach Arnie Fonseca Jr., a canyon coach and exercise physiologist. If you want to speak with him about your own journey, reach out. His contact information is in the show notes. All right, be safe out there, folks. The heat is here. Monsoon season will be next. Take all precautions. This is when the canyon is its most dangerous. Be serious about your strategy. Be serious about your preparation, and you can still have a successful adventure. But you must be serious about every detail. That's it for now. My name is Brian Special, encouraging you, as always, to go hike the canyon. Take that first step. Embrace the journey. And when you get there, whether it's for time goals or taking your time, just hike your own hike and savor every step in the marvelous Grand Canyon. We'll see you next time on the Grand Canyon Hiker Dude Show, powered by hiKin. Hiking plus kinship, that's hiKin. Together, we roam.